Welcome back to the Protect the World podcast. For the last year, this project has been happening in documentary form, and it's taken me to 9 amazing NGOs from across Africa and South Asia. It's been an incredible adventure, and if you haven't had the chance, I'd highly encourage you to go back and check out each of those episodes, because they all contain some of the most inspiring and dedicated people that I've ever met. You'll find a link to the entire series in the show notes. At the beginning of February, though, after spending most of the last 4 years overseas, I made the decision to return to Australia and start pursuing another ambition that I've had for a while, becoming a teacher. I've moved up to Darwin, started my master's, and I'm really enjoying having a base and a steady community around me again. But my passion for sharing the stories of people and organisations who are making the world a better place certainly hasn't gone away. And so Protect the World is back in podcast form. And I've got a conversation with an incredible set of guests to share with you on today's episode. The African School of Storytelling, or AFRISOS, was founded in 2020 with the goal of providing opportunities to the next generation of African nature filmmakers and community-based storytellers. And since then, they've delivered dozens of innovative programs and collaborated with a range of Indigenous communities across the continent. Joining me on today's episode is Jigar Ganatra, the organisation's founder and chairman, as well as his co-founder, Frank Papushka, and programs director, Simi. The team joined me live on location from Tanzania's spectacular Eastern Arc Mountains, and it made for an incredible conversation, which I hope you enjoy as much as I did. So now I bring you Jigar, Frank, and Simi, representing the amazing team at the African School of Storytelling. Jigar Ganatra, a very warm welcome to the Protect the World podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm currently here with Frank and Simi, the co-founders of AFRISOS. We're here in the Eastern Arc Mountains and currently on a program. So good to be tuning in from a very special place.
Fantastic. Always our opening question. Tell me, who are you and how do you describe yourself?
I'm Jigar Ganatra and I'm a Tanzanian filmmaker. I sort of began this storytelling journey before I became a camera person. I began it when I was in school, in high school. I was invited for a Model United Nations conference in Nairobi at the actual UN offices. And I was a delegate of Madagascar talking about deforestation. And I remember being on stage in that moment and everything was trembling. I was talking about all the endemic species found in the Madagascar rainforests, all the plant medicines. And while giving that speech, I could just imagine the importance of that forest, but something, my whole body was shaking. And I remember after that speech, everybody in that room was all fired up about protecting this forest and raising their placards. And at that moment, I knew that I need to use my voice to speak about nature. And so I guess even beyond being a filmmaker, I would say I'm trying to be a voice for nature and for everything that I hear when I'm in these wild places.
Voice for nature. I love that. Great. And tell me, in a nutshell, how would you describe the mission and the purpose of AFRISOS? Why does the organization exist?
AFRISOS's vision is really to preserve and promote the traditional ecological knowledge of African people. You know, the natural and cultural heritage of Africa is extremely rich. It is, I would say, arguably the richest continent in the world. But a lot of these stories, a lot of this ecological knowledge from traditional communities is being lost every single day. And so we've come up with a creative solution of using community-driven storytelling and traditional methods of taking oral tradition into now filmmaking, photography, music to encapsulate that ancestry and that deep knowledge for future generations and for the rest of the world.
Beautiful. Now, alongside you, Jigar, we've also got a couple of extra guests on today's episode, Frank and Simi. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves, explain your connection to AFRISOS, and then maybe if one of you can describe where you are and what you're doing there at the moment?
Great. My name is Frank Sylvester. I'm a filmmaker based in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And I am the co-founder of AFRISOS. I remember when Jiggy came with this idea of starting AFRISOS, we are hiking Kilimanjaro together. So he came up with this idea. Then I was like, yeah, cool, because myself as an African filmmaker, I grew up listening to stories around the fire growing up. I used to be a really huge fan of stories. So from there, I was like, yeah, cool. We can do this together because I like to preserve and of course, I protect these stories from, of course, disappearing. So I decided to join Jigar in this good mission to, of course, raise AfriSource and empower more people. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Simi. I'm originally from Slovakia. I joined AFRISOS 2 years ago, and now I'm not a filmmaker, so I'm more of a linguist and a musician, I would say, in terms of how my brain is wired. And that allows me to bring in a very different angle to how AFRISOS operates and how we conduct our workshops and programs. And right now, we're actually here in Guru Mountains, in the Eastern Arcs, in Tanzania, in the middle of a filmmaking workshop, expedition filmmaking workshop, where we're guiding 5 filmmakers through a process of crafting 5 powerful short films from this unique ecosystem.
That sounds incredible. What an amazing opportunity, an amazing place. Like I can see it behind you right now, and it's stunning. It looks like one of those Zoom backgrounds that, you know, automatically get put behind you, but it's real. It's incredible. And yeah, tell me a little bit more about that location, the Eastern Arc Mountains. For someone who doesn't know much about them, how would you describe filming on location there? Like try to paint a picture of it for me.
So Guru Mountains are, especially this time of the year, pretty challenging place to film because we are in a cloud forest. That means we are in a very moist, humid environment already. And now it is a rainy season, so we're very lucky that we can be sitting out here because there's quite regular heavy showers. It's been raining all throughout the night. And so one of the biggest challenges right now is definitely the rains and the humidity. And that is also the magic of these mountains, because that has allowed over the centuries or millennia to create these amazing species in here. The ecosystem hasn't changed much, hasn't been affected by the changes of the surrounding areas, and so these cloud forests have been here for thousands and thousands of years, and that has allowed for a lot of species to develop here that are nowhere else in the world. So Eastern Arc Mountains are famous for having 95% of all of the chameleon species in Tanzania are in the Eastern Arc Mountains, as well as 75% of all of Tanzanians are drinking water that comes from the Eastern Arc Mountains. And that's the significance. And in terms of filming part, I'll hand over to Jigar and Frank because they are on the filming side.
Yeah, so mine and Frank's role is to mentor the filmmakers on the technical side of shooting in such environments and working with. So all of our AfriSource filmmaking workshops center around character-driven storytelling. So each of the filmmakers are given a character or a contributor who we're calling them the nature griots, because really they're not just a character, but they're a griot, they're a storyteller, they're a keeper of knowledge. Griot is a West African word that means, yeah, a library of the community. So we find these libraries who hold this traditional knowledge, pair them up with filmmakers, and they have to create a short film that encapsulates the traditional knowledge. And so, yeah, filming here with these endemic species that are found here of chameleons, frogs, snakes that are, not found anywhere else in the world. And that's just a big honor to use different types of lenses, macro lenses, probe lenses, but then also root ourselves into the African nature storytelling rather than just copying what is happening with, the traditional films that we see online. I mean, the BBCs, the National Geographics, rather than making a copy paste of that, we're going back to the drawing board and asking people, okay, how do African people see nature and how do we represent that on the screen? So that's really Frank and myself's work. And yeah, Frank has been doing this type of storytelling for over 10 years.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, coming from a cinematography background, I've been filming for over 10 years for different organizations. So I have enough skills that I think that are critical to transfer for the new upcoming filmmakers. Because in Africa, as we all know, there's not much of opportunities available for upcoming filmmakers. So we decided to, to give them these skills and show them, give them like hands-on experience with amazing gears that we are using, teaching them cinematography, the art of storytelling, and all that stuff. So that's what we are doing here. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. I've spent some time in cloud forests, and they're some of the most like magical places on the planet, but they're also some of the most difficult to film in terms of the humidity and all of that. So yeah, fair play to you all. Frank, I'm wondering actually if you could talk a little bit more about the challenges that are faced by young African filmmakers, particularly those who want to pursue nature and community storytelling. What sorts of barriers exist for people trying to break into that industry?
Awesome. So among the biggest challenge, I think it's access to knowledge, access to opportunities to be up here in the world. Because as you know, being here it's a bit expensive. So and of course you need to have that knowledge, of course, of telling these stories. So access is number one, and I think it's like lack of direction in a way, because upcoming filmmakers end up doing like event coverage, like weddings and all other stuff, because they don't really see the value of this other side of filmmaking. So us as AFRISOS, our biggest mission, of course, to give them access, of course, from not only Tanzania. We are inviting mentees from all other parts of Africa as well, to give them this opportunity. And of course, everything is free, so they don't have to pay anything. So we're giving them this access, because that's what we came to notice is lacking. And of course, opportunity for them to invest themselves in nature, fall in love with nature, fall in love with stories. That way they can start changing their mindset about seeing the positive side of telling stories than doing the normal kind of videography job in the cities. Yeah.
So AFRISOS was founded in 2020. Tell me a little bit about the history of the organization. How did it start, and how has it evolved since then?
AFRISOS began actually on the peak of Kilimanjaro mountain. Frank and I were climbing together on a commercial gig, and once we got to the top, we just realized how lucky we are that as African filmmakers, we've gotten these opportunities to have these skills and develop them, and that there's very, very rare opportunities for other African filmmakers like ourselves to get these opportunities. So we said, you know what, let's create a school. Let's give back these skills in a way that is the most effective way to learn for Africans and for people all around the world. And I believe that's hands-on. Hands-on learning is the best way, getting your feet dirty, being thrown into the deep water and just thinking on your feet, being creative in the times where there's no other choice but to be creative is when really magic happens. I believe that diamonds are created under pressure. So that's really where we decided to create a unique learning opportunity where you're not just sitting in a classroom learning theory and just thinking without doing. Rather, you're thrown in to a filmmaking scenario and have to make do with what you have. So that's really the birth of AFRISOS, where we wanted to create not a school physically, but a school on the field, where we have a limited amount of time, we have the equipment that we have, and your task and your assignment is to create a film. So since 2020 on the mountain, now fast forward to 2026, we have done now over 29 different programs that we have done in different storytelling. So from music to photography to filmmaking. So yeah, that's a brief history of AFRISOS. And this is feeling like just the beginning. It feels like we have a lot more to do.
Amazing. That's wonderful. Yeah, Simi, tell me a little bit more about the places and the context that AFRISOS is working in. What sorts of communities are you collaborating with? What kinds of places are you doing projects in? Where is AFRISOS working on an average day?
Well, an average day in an AFRISOS is a very unaverage day. We're now on our 29th program at the moment. So the next program is going to be the 30th AFRISOS program. And we are shifting our focus a little bit after conducting so many programs and working across so many countries or all over the continent. We're noticing where the need really is. And we're shifting our focus towards the Indigenous communities because we believe that they are the original holders of the traditional ecological knowledge, as well as a lot of that is encoded in their local languages. And so as a linguist, I really get passionate about this. We believe that empowering these communities with digital tools allows them to not only preserve and hopefully also revive this knowledge and this wisdom that they hold for themselves and for their future generations, but it also allows them to have a seat at the table in the digital world, and it gives them the voice that they can represent themselves and their values and their beliefs in the global stage. And so we're really now working together with these communities more closely instead of having local communities and these local protagonists being the subjects of our stories. We have, together with our partner, the Wilderness Project, coined the term nature griots. So nature griots are the storytellers that are giving the voice to the nature. And so we invite a local nature griot and a digital nature griot, and we pair them up. And then together they create these powerful short films that are then used as tools of preservation and revival of this wisdom, as well as something that is very valuable for the whole world. And then, as Jigar said, I'm very excited for starting the first musical program this year as well. So having the organization being started by two filmmakers, naturally all of the workshops were focused on filmmaking and photography, and now we're expanding that into what are other ways of African storytelling. Music is definitely on top of that list, and so this year we're going to launch our first AFRISOS music storytelling program as well.
Incredible. I love the vision. We're going to touch on a couple of those more specific examples shortly, but going back to your classic filmmaking program, the one that you're on now, I'm wondering if you could, Jigar, run me through the entire process from start to finish. So who are the people that you invite on these expeditions? How do you connect with them? And what does the day-to-day look like when you're out in the field?
Yeah, so on our 6th year now, we've mentored over 154 different storytellers from 19 different countries in Africa. And so through these 29 programs we've done, we've had the ability to refine the program and see really what works, who are the best people to bring onto these programs, who are the most deserving, and who will make the most of this knowledge to make the biggest impact. So the type of people that we look for are not necessarily budding or emerging filmmakers in the sense that they're just starting out. We're not looking for beginners. We're looking for people who already know that this is something that they want to commit their life to. Yeah, they already know the basics. They know how to, sort of work with the camera, work with composition. And then what we're leveling them up with is really how to use skills in a more refined way to tell nuanced stories that represent the African way of telling stories. We're bringing on people here who are interested in nature, in the not in just in the sense of biology and science, but also in the terms of eco-philosophy and cosmology, because a lot of communities have nature as totems, as myths, as legends, as music. So we need to dig deep into that and look beyond how we've taught to see nature through books and through science, because that's a very reductionist way, right? Like when we look at a leaf, we want to zoom in and look at all the molecules and all the cells, and all of that is really important. Obviously, that's what's got us to where we are today. But in overly emphasizing on that, we're missing out on the magic of nature, which a lot of communities living here traditionally still have. So we try to bring on people who are curious about that, people who are open-minded, and culturally sensitive, because every place that you go to, as Frank said, we're getting access to things that otherwise have never been filmed before. So we have to treat that with a lot of respect, with a lot of curiosity and co-creation. So we're looking for filmmakers who are not just coming here to take these stories and put their name on it and then just put it out there. We're looking for filmmakers who have the values of co-creation at the very center. They have the spirit of collaboration, and when we bring together these digital griots and these traditional griots, they're co-creating. It's not that the digital griot is making this film and then editing it in the way that they want. They're very much throughout these 10 days that our filmmaking workshops run for, co-creating. So in terms of the breakdown of the 10 days, the first 2 days are sort of orientation and really pre-production, where the filmmaker and the contributor work together in deciding what is the most impactful story that they can tell together. And then they have 3 to 4 days to shoot. So that's when we are really putting them under pressure to create a 1 to 3 minute film in these 4 days. And then they have 3 days of editing, where on the field they have to edit what they've shot. And then on the last day, we have a community cinema where, within these 10 days, we want the film to be finished and screened. We're not going to take this film to another place and then start editing it and then come back a few months later to screen. We have done that in the past, and then we've just learned that extending the period of shooting doesn't really improve the film at all. It just prolongs it for the sake of prolonging it. So we said, 10 days is enough to shoot, to edit, and to screen. So that's really the model of what we do, and I think it works really, really well.
Perfect. And tell me a little bit now about the Hadzabe Media Center that you've set up. Firstly, who are the Hadza for people who aren't aware? Where do they live? And what's the goal with this project?
So as AFRISOS, we are working with the Hadzabe community since 2022. We have started working there because of Jigar's connection with the community. And it is a part of a larger project that we're running with the community. As I previously said, we're now really focusing on Indigenous communities and their wisdom and preserving and reviving that. So Hadzabe community is definitely one of those communities where we started this approach. Hadzabe are very special people. They live in Yaida Valley, essentially between three big, very famous Tanzanian national parks. And they have lived there for the past 50,000 years. So they really are the guardians of that land. They have all of the knowledge that you can imagine of that land just woven into their DNA, essentially. And they have a lot of amazing stories told in their beautiful click language called the Hadzane. Now, there's a lot of changes that the community is facing, and there's a lot of other tribes coming into the area. There's a lot of climate change throwing off their traditional way of living, standing in their way of continuing their traditional lifestyle of hunter-gatherers. And this is where something like a media center is a perfect place for them to use these digital media to create what we call digital artifacts. So I'll rewind a little bit. Hadzabe and Hadzabe people have oral tradition, and so none of their traditional ecological wisdom or any of these memories that they have, they're not written down. It's all oral tradition. And Hadzabe Media Center provides them the opportunity to turn all of this into digital artifacts and document it for their future generations, as well as use these digital formats as something that will help them revive the language that is currently extremely endangered, with only about 1,300 speakers left.
Amazing. That sounds like an incredible project. And Jigar, I'd like to chat to you now about two of your recent films. And the first one is Ishamba. It's a beautiful short film that you produced with the Batwa community in southwest Uganda. I was actually in that region a little over a year ago filming with an NGO there, and when I arrived, I didn't know much about the Batwa and their story, but I remember learning about the community and what had happened to them, and sort of thinking to myself while I was there, like, this is the story that needs to be told. And I'm so glad that you came and told that story and did it so beautifully. So to start with, could you maybe talk a little bit about the Batwa? Who are they, and what happened to them during the establishment of Windy National Park?
Batwa, I would say, are one of the first peoples of the entire continent. Their territory spans from the Congo to Uganda and other parts of the central rainforests of Africa. And the Batwa are a hunter-gatherer group who are no longer allowed to practice their hunter-gatherer tradition, even though for thousands and thousands of years, they've depended on the forest for all of their needs. 30 years ago, when the Bwindi Impenetrable National Park, which is a beautiful national park that people from all around the world come and see these mountain gorillas, this was one of the ancestral homes of the Batwa people. And because of setting up this national park, they had to be evicted. And now they live on the fringes, on the outskirts of the national park, not allowed to hunt or gather or collect one of their favorite foods, which is wild honey. And so when I met them, I saw a lot of similarities between them and the Hadza people who AFRISOS works with. We saw that they've been commodified just like the Hadza have. They've become into a product or an attraction for tourists, and many people who come there don't really understand the grave impacts of losing your favorite food, your language, your way of life. For the Batwa, the future is quite uncertain. We don't know how the next generation. I mean, we could already see when we were there. All three of us have actually been there making films with the Batwa, Simi, Frank, and I, and we all noticed that the future generation, they don't know the language anymore. They don't know how to make an arrow, and it's just really, honestly, quite sad and depressing of how within one generation so much can be lost. But at the same time, what gives me hope is that there is a big desire to participate in storytelling and to preserve the knowledge. And so when we were making this film, the collaborative approach that we had, everybody was around there trying to remember what is the word for medicine, what is the word for this, what is the word for that. And so we just had this think tank all of a sudden where some of the words that have not been uttered for the last 30 years are now coming out through this co-creation process.
Yeah, amazing. It's a really heartbreaking situation there. I mean, I also think of, the thousands and thousands of tourists that are coming to see those gorillas every year. Like, how many of them actually are exposed to this story and know about it, know about the history of that park. And yeah, there does seem to be so much sort of rich opportunity for collaboration with the Batwa. There, like off the top of my head, like rangers, like training Batwa to be park rangers in Bwindi, like that just seems like a no-brainer to me. But
yeah, it was very interesting when we took one of the main characters. The main character of the film Ishamba is a lady called Elvira, and the reason that we chose her as a character is she was one of the people who remembers the language really well. But it was interesting to me that it was her first time to be in the national park, and despite it being her first time, she knew all the ferns and all the variety of fauna that is there, and the flora, and the birds, the reptiles. Everything was so familiar to her, and the way that her face lit up, and the stories that she was able to tell me about these different creatures and these plants was, at the palm of her hand. It was encyclopedic knowledge that was coming back. So I agree with you that there is a really missed opportunity, or an opportunity that still has to be filled with allowing the Batwa to become, storytellers of the forest, to these tour guides, become rangers, become protectors, and still have this memory revived while doing that.
yeah, absolutely. You do a lot of community-led filmmaking. Talk to me about that process more generally. Like, how do you go about engaging with a community like the Batwa in a way that's authentic and collaborative?
So one of the things that really helps when co-creating with communities is language. I happen to speak 7 languages and learning my 8th language, which is Hadza, the click language. And so immediately when somebody is speaking to you without a translator, and you're able to just connect with them, directly in the language that they know, and have this dialogue, it changes the entire dynamic. You're now seeing eye to eye, you're making jokes, you're laughing together, and immediately there's so much barriers that have been reduced. And so that is number one when it comes to co-creation and making storytelling. So with these filmmaking programs that we do with AFRISOS, the type of filmmakers that we choose are people who can speak the language of the people on the ground. And whenever we move to different regions, we're looking for filmmakers of those specific regions. And so that's number one. And number two is trying to break the gaze and the mold of Western storytelling. When it comes to Western storytelling, there is a very tried and tested model of three-act structure, or of the Disneyfication of stories that, once upon a time there's a hero and then something happens to the hero and then the hero gets transformed and comes back having changed and, transforming something. Uh, while these ways of storytelling works really well and engages audiences, they might not be the most authentic way of telling stories in an African context. So we really try our best to break this mold. Obviously, we work for clients as filmmakers who we have to tell the stories in that way. So we are also in a way molded and modeled with the Western way of telling stories. But the good thing of a workshop is that we're not delivering to a client. We're not trying to promote a certain agenda. We're not trying to, get maximum number of views online. That's not really the first goal of telling these stories. And also, that's not the audience. That's not the primary audience. Even though these films do end up going to film festivals and winning awards and being appreciated and seen online, our primary audience are the communities themselves. So with that in mind, we're able to get into the psychography or the psychology of how do communities think and what do they appreciate, what do they find funny. And to us, it's always a surprise when we're editing these films and, the communities watch them and they laugh at certain things. For us, it's like, what? That wasn't really funny. That was, it's quite surprising what they're laughing at and what they're engaging with. And so after having done so many of these workshops, we find that, people, when they see people that they're familiar with on the big screen, or there's moments of vulnerability shown on screen, it really really relates to the audiences that we have here in the community cinema. So when it comes to the drawing board of how do we co-create and how do we tell these stories, we allow the nature griots, the traditional storytellers, to really open up and to participate in the structure, in the storytelling structure. Like, what do they want in the first part of the story? What do they want in the end? What do they want in the middle? And it works. What the answers that we get for them, and when we put it on the editing timeline, it still is really entertaining. It's still really something that is worth watching. Um, so so yeah, I mean, I think even our curriculum, when we're teaching the curriculum of AFRISOS, it's in the local language, so that we're not talking only to the filmmakers, we're talking to the contributors as well, and they have a chance to put in their inputs.
I think everything you've just said there is a perfect lead in. You talk about story structure and comedy and all of that, to talk about chameleon corridors. I absolutely loved this film, and particularly that character that you created sort of out of the chameleon. Perhaps, Jigar, if you could talk a little bit about the film itself, what's it about? And then, Simi, if you want to talk about how you then expanded that into a larger impact campaign around the film.
I've looked up at natural history films for as far as I can remember. I loved watching, wildlife from the TV, but even before that, I saw wildlife in real life. I was born in Mwanza, which is a town very close to the Serengeti, and I remember at 3 years old or 4 years old. I don't remember exactly how old I was, but I was really really young. I was be like, yeah, an infant or a small child, and I remember looking at a leopard straight into the eyes on the lap of my father, and the interaction that I had with that leopard still is very vivid to me to this day. And so I always wanted to make wildlife films, but I knew that there's something missing from the wildlife films that I'm seeing on TV. And that was really the perspective of how I remember nature, or how I remember those safari guides telling me about nature. So when approaching Chameleon Corridors, I was quite nervous because I knew that wildlife films should not be I knew that wildlife films should not be oh my god, this word is so difficult to say. I knew that wildlife films should not be anthropomorphized, that you shouldn't put a human voice into wildlife. That's kind of taboo, when it comes to telling natural history stories. You can have a voiceover, but you cannot have a voice for the animal. And to me, that felt kind of odd, because when I was hearing, either animations from TV, or if I was hearing traditional stories from the guides, or even through making films generally about, not about wildlife, but just about people living close to wildlife, I could see that the way that they relate to these stories they gave them characters. This was the African way of telling stories. African nature stories have animals that speak. They have animals that have a personality. They have animals that have, a spiritual significance. So when I came to the Eastern Arc Mountains for the first time, I knew that I wanted to start with the way that the communities here see chameleons. And so chameleons have a lot of stereotypes. They have a lot of taboos. They have a lot of um, fears based around them. There's superstitions that the communities have about chameleons. So when I went to the drawing board and writing the script, I knew that I wanted to embed the way that the communities see them. And so we got a famous voice actor here in Tanzania who is called Oni Sigala. He is part of what we call the Baraza ya Swahili. So he is in charge of collecting all of these Swahili proverbs and African proverbs and sayings and riddles. And so when we were co-creating the script with this famous voice actor, he put in all of these proverbs that Swahili people would relate to, Swahili speaking people would relate to. And so the film is really, really decorated with all of these proverbs and a voice of a chameleon that is wise, because chameleons have been in this forest that has evolved for millions of years for a really, really long time. So I knew that chameleons are wise, but at the same time, they're quite small and they're quite, quirky, where they get to change their colors based on what they're around. So I imagined the character of a chameleon being wise, but being quirky and funny at the same time. So what we did was we took this deep Swahili voice full of these wise proverbs, and in post-production, I sped the voice up to 110%. So when you speed up the voice, it becomes like kind of Calvin and the Chipmunks. It becomes very squeaky. So you have a deep voice that is very squeaky, and that's what became the voice of the chameleon. And it had a lot of wisdom, it had a lot of superstition, and it had seen everything. It had seen how this amazing landscape had evolved with these tall, massive trees and these clouds passing through. And then it's also seen more recently how it's been logged, from the colonial period of the late 1800s to the early 1900s. The colonial powers of Tanzania came and logged these hardwood trees and used them as furniture, used them to build essentially the West through pillaging the resources of Africa. So the chameleon had seen this. And then after that, after independence, the chameleon has also seen how the population has boomed rapidly and how more and more farmers have come into this territory and cut these trees and created more space. So I wanted in the film to reflect this, to reflect how the chameleon has seen everything, but also it has a really deep wisdom of how we can still coexist, of how humans and nature don't have to be a destructive force against each other. They can be a co-creating force as well. So this is really the message of the chameleon in the story, and I wanted to show it in the most authentic way that could relate to Africans. I didn't have the global audience in mind. I had the African audience in mind. And that's why I went ahead and I was like, you know what, let me be brave. Let me do something that is taboo in the West and give a voice to the chameleon. And in fact, in taking that brave choice, it paid off. And audiences all around the world enjoyed this film, like yourself. And, people that are maybe not from the West, maybe people in Chile, people in South America, people in Asia, when they're watching these films, they're also able to relate, because in those cultures as well, nature is alive. It has a voice.
So, Brody, where did you see the film? How did you come across Chameleon Corridors?
I think I came across it on Instagram when I was researching the organization, and then I found the Vimeo link to the full film, and absolutely loved it. Tell me a little bit. Obviously, Jigar went with a big crew and put this film together, and then tell us about what you did next.
Yes, I'll actually start with before the crew went to the field, because that's when we first met with Jigar. He was just in Amsterdam at the International Documentary Film Festival, and he was asking me, like, I need a UV light because I need to film these chameleons. And so I helped him order a UV light. And so that was my first introduction to, the world of chameleons, to the Eastern Arcs, to just this forest where we're sitting right now. Later on, I've actually been in Tanzania throughout the editing process as well. So I've been there really throughout the whole process of the Chameleon Corridors film being born, as well as David Ponero, one of the crew members. He has just out of fun out of a joke, made a little song and sent it on WhatsApp as a little chorus or a little script that he wrote about chameleons. And then I, again, as a little joke back, produced the song with a really good producer in Amsterdam and sent them back like a soundtrack. So it was a really nice journey that we've had together, and also essentially my first contact with film, since I'm not a filmmaker. Then it took about a year that the film was actually finalized, and so last year in May, after all of the producing was done and the sound was done, the film was officially out in the world, and I was also through this journey, I've learned how a lot of Tanzanians are actually scared of chameleons, which was very interesting because in the BTS you might have seen even Jigar is really scared of chameleons. And so there is a lot of footage of the filmmakers and of the Tanzanian crew filming these chameleons, but then having them, crawl on their arm and they're just screaming and they're like, you can see the fear in their eyes. And I couldn't understand that because as a European, I mean, I don't know how it is in Australia, but we love creatures and we love to, to touch them and to interact with them. And it was really interesting for me to find out the Tanzanians are scared of them. Well, not only are they scared of them, but then there's a lot of, as an effect of that, there's a lot of fear-based killing of chameleons and wildlife. And so I was thinking, how can we make sure that this film, after it's done and it's out, doesn't just get lost and sit on a shelf? And a beautiful opportunity came up with addressing this fear of chameleons. I was organizing a big event for 1,500 kids in Arusha, primary and secondary students of local schools. And we thought, why not show them the Chameleon Corridors film and use that as an amazing tool to, first of all, make them aware of how much chameleon diversity there is in Tanzania. Tanzania is number 2 in the whole world in the amount of chameleon species. 47 chameleon species in Tanzania, and most Tanzanians don't know about that. Second of all, how can we break this fear that comes from a lot of the myths and the legends that they're hearing from the elders? There's a lot of stories around chameleons. For example, if you touch it, it will explode, or if you touch it, you will turn into a chameleon, or something bad will happen in the village. So as an experienced designer, I thought, okay, before we show this big chameleon on a big screen, which is like 4 by 5 meters, how about we make sure that these kids get a gentler way of interacting with the animals? And so we've had a watercoloring activity for the kids. Then we've had a surround sound experience, like an immersive sound experience, where they got to listen to the sounds of an ecosystem and draw what they're hearing. So a bit of a mindfulness experience, connecting them with the nature. And then after watching the film, which is obviously hero-led by someone that they can relate to, young Anna, she takes charge in the community and she kind of changes the course and convinces everyone to start planting trees. And she's not scared of chameleons. We've asked the 1,500 participating children to write a letter of how they will create change in their communities. And this has turned into a very powerful experience. It was really more as an experiment. It was my first event I've organized in Tanzania after organizing events in Europe over 10 years. And also my first event that I organized for children. And it was very powerful to see that shift in their mindset. Not only that, there's been other screenings that we've done around Arusha, privately, with friends, with small organizations. And a lot of the times people came back to us, especially Tanzanians, saying like, this film healed my fear of chameleons. And that's when I realized, okay, this really is very powerful, because what's happening here around the Eastern Arc Mountains is that there's a lot of farming communities moving closer and closer to these precious cloud forests. Can't blame them because of the climate change and the changing weather patterns. Their farming is becoming more and more challenging. And they look at these cloud forests where there is, abundance of rain and really fertile ground. And so they're like, okay, let's move our farm onto the edges of this forest. Not having any connection with the nature locally and having all of these fears of chameleons and snakes, etc., there's a lot of fear-based killing happening around the Eastern Arcs, which is putting this unique ecosystem under a lot of pressure. And so taking the film back to the communities, just as Jigar intended, was exactly what needed to happen next to actually make sure that this film turns into a powerful tool of local impact. And so I took a chance. There was there was an application for the Jackson Wild and Earth Alliance Impact Award, and created, wrote a concept of how we want to actually use this film as a tool for the communities to create that change of heart towards these special creatures. And we've happened to win the first place last year in September, and since then we've been working with our partners on how do we actually execute that, because our goals are pretty steep. We want to reach up to 30,000 farmers in this area. We've identified with our local partner PAMS Foundation the 5 biggest villages, or I would say fastest growing villages in this area, that are creating the biggest pressure right now on the forests. And so we're going to be showing the films right there in the villages. As well as engaging the younger generation, because they are ultimately the future ambassadors of the wildlife. They are going to be the future guardians of these forests. And so we have this cool track as well, where we're going to continue these immersive experiences that we've designed that work really well for the younger generation. And then also involving AFRISOS into this AFRISOS Expedition Filmmaking Workshop fits really well into this whole picture, because by bringing East African filmmakers to this place and creating more short films that are also representing the local voices of people that are already on the forefront of this change. As we conduct these screenings, we can show them not only the Chameleon Corridors film, but also these other short films that are created during this workshop. And so in June or July, we'll see there should be a big festival celebrating the wildlife living in the cloud forest and showing the films that we've created.
Fantastic. I love that whole vision. It's really cool, very holistic. And yeah, I remember just over a year ago meeting my first chameleon in Uganda and losing my mind, being very excited. So whether or not you love chameleons already or you're a little bit more skeptical, it's a really good film. And we'll put links to both that one and Ishamba in the show notes so people can check them out straight away. Frank, I wanted to ask you, if you think about those children who are sitting there watching that film in Arusha or elsewhere in Africa, some of them are probably looking at you guys and thinking, that's a pretty cool job. I want to do that when I'm older. But maybe they're not sure where to start. What advice would you give to a young person who wants to get into filmmaking or photography or any of the other creative fields that AFRISOS works in?
Great. So I think everybody is a natural storyteller in their heart, but yeah, a lot of us don't really know how to hear that voice inside us. So I think there's a way of everybody to really use the knowledge, because I believe everybody has a chance to bring fresh idea into the industry, because I mean, filmmaking, a film is a fingerprint of a filmmaker. So everybody has a unique voice, everybody has their own unique perspective of how they view the world. So I think it's like a calling. So if you have a calling, if you have a message that you want to hear to the world, you should not be scared. So just come out and, of course, use any device you have. And yeah, at this day and age with Instagram, with content creation, so you can use any device you have, like a phone to tell a story, anything you have. So, and of course, it's easy to get audience by posting videos online, Instagram, YouTube. So yeah, I believe everybody has unique chance now to actually tell any story they want to do, and to start wherever they are, like in life as well. Yeah.
And Jigar, what about for someone who's a little bit older now, maybe a teenager, someone who's got a little bit of filmmaking experience, but still just starting out? What advice would you have for them?
I once read, I think I'm quoting from another filmmaker, I don't know who, a legend filmmaker. He once said that you need to have enough life experience to make a really good film. So I feel like a lot of people, when they think about becoming a filmmaker, they are too wary or thinking about what camera do I need, what lenses do I need, what tripod do I need, and they get in the way of their own storytelling. But in reality, they just need to develop a perspective. They need to feel. They need to look into their heart. My own process of making films, before I even pick up the camera, I'm in the place with the people I'm making a film with, and I'm trying to feel something. I'm trying to have an emotion that I would then that I would then translate onto the screen. So, I, and the same thing. I never studied film. I knew that I wanted to be a filmmaker even before going to university, but I decided to instead in university choose world issues instead of studying filmmaking, because then I would learn about really what are the systems that control the world. How does the politics and and all of that work. I mean, I think that was helpful, honestly, because when I'm then approaching all these variety of topics and interviewing people, I'm able to have that nuanced perspective and get into the different spheres of impact, like whether it's about culture or about ecology or about politics or about the economy. I'm able to ask different questions around those things and then get a narrative that is cohesive. So I feel like people need to just feel their heart, despite us being exposed to so many things online and our phone. It's not engaging our heart, it's engaging our mind and it's engaging our knowledge, but the heart ends up becoming closed because you have so many things that are inputting you and you have so many impulses that you just can't feel enough. And I've honestly, I'm a victim of this problem as well, that I've been bombarded with so many things that your heart gets closed and you can't feel anything anymore, and you want to protect your heart because there's just so many emotions. But and so we end up being in this default state of being closed. So I think in order to be a filmmaker, the heavy work and the heavy lifting is in the emotions and in the feeling. So whatever it takes to open your heart, do that first before picking up the camera. Because any cinematographer that's out there that's doing award-winning cinema is definitely somebody who has a lot of sensitivity with their heart that they're able to translate.
That's a really great response. Thanks for that. We're almost done, but I have a couple of sort of fun quick fire questions that I like to ask everyone, and I'll throw them open to all of you. You guys keen for that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. All right. So you get to pick one person, living or dead, and you get to live their entire life from start to finish. So you pause your life right now, you live their whole life, experiencing everything they've experienced, and then you come back to your life with all of those memories and experiences. Who do you choose?
Yeah, that's a good one. I have to think like a minute.
Whoever has an answer first, just jump in.
I'm trying to think. I know who it is, but I don't have their name on my mind. Oh yeah, uh, Denzel Washington. I really like the way he sees the world. He has so much depth, and I mean, I don't know too much about what happened in his life, but when I hear him speak and when I see his eyes, he looks like somebody who has his fingers on the truth. At any point he knows what's the true essence of life. So I think he's a person I would like to see the world through his eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, so for me right now, I'm very much inspired by Ryan Coogler, the director of Black Panther, Sinner. He just won Oscars like a couple of days ago. So the thing that inspires me from that guy, I mean, the way he's bringing African original way of telling stories, like using songs and music, bringing history. Because I think that was the only unique perspective in Hollywood that was missing right now, is telling stories from different perspective. So the use, I mean, in African culture, the use of music and song has been like the tradition over the years. Whenever someone is born, people sing. Whenever someone get married, people sing. Whenever people die, people sing. So music is part of the story. So leaving music out, so him bringing music into the film, I think that's a unique way of telling stories. And I wish to live his life to see how his career goes. So yeah.
Oh, hard one. For me, I think I would choose Marilyn Monroe. Not just because she was an absolute icon and she was an absolutely beautiful woman and she knew it and she, just was really in her body and at that time also very, very unconventional way of holding herself in the society. She disrupted so many things, and a lot of people know her whole story. But what I particularly appreciate about her is that she was using that platform, that attention that she had to create inclusion and to open spaces for people. So she wouldn't, for example, come and perform if Ella Fitzgerald wasn't also allowed. Oh no, sorry, I think it was Nina Simone. Like she would refuse to come to an event if also Nina Simone wasn't allowed to come. So she was using that platform, that power that she had, to open doors for people that at that time it was so unusual of someone to do it in that way. And so I really look up to her for that.
Oh, those are 3 great responses. Love that. I'm interested now, and again, feel free to jump in. If there are any other organizations out there that inspire you and whose work you admire, some organizations that you might want to give a shout out to.
I'll give a shout out to Eva Ayaro and her Women in Conservation organization that she started. She's a Tanzanian herpetologist and studied in Oxford and kind of noticed all of the gaps in conservation, which is still very male-led. And she came back to Tanzania and started the Women in Conservation Foundation to create more opportunities for women and young women to join the conservation efforts in Tanzania.
I want to give a shout out to one of our partners. They're called Earth Alliance, and Earth Alliance have been doing incredible impact campaigns for films, really taking films outside of just a screen and really engaging audiences and policymakers and change makers to actually materialize some trajectory changes of our world. And the current impact campaign that they're currently developing, which I'm super interested in, is called Be Wild. So it's about bees and it's about bee protection. And that is very much something that Simi and I are diving deep on with the upcoming film that we're working on called Children of Honey with the Hadzabe community. And so we would really like to link up with them in this impact campaign to awaken the world onto how important bees are.
Awesome. I'm really keen. I'll keep an eye out for that film. Wrapping up now, I'll leave this to whoever wants to speak on it. Tell me a little bit about AFRISOS's plans for the future. What have you got coming up in the pipeline aside from the bee movie?
So with AFRISOS and the future, future is bright, future is big. We are launching our first music program this year, and so we're very much looking forward to extending the African School of Storytelling. Like, what is the storytelling part of our name, venturing into music and possibly other areas, be it art, be it drawing, be it whatever the Indigenous communities bring to us, and say this is relevant for us. This is how we preserve our stories, because it's not only written in a book as we're used to. These traditional ecological wisdoms are a lot of the times woven into different formats, and so exploring that is really, really exciting. I'm particularly excited also on the impact campaign side of things. I feel like that's a very young field that is still growing and still evolving, and a lot of the films that we have created, having this impact campaign angle to it is just really allowing for different ways of distributing films, especially on the African continent. We're facing a lot of challenges with film distribution. And so, as Jigar said, a lot of the films are made for the local communities, but then these communities are really remote. How do you actually make sure that they see these films, right? So there's a lot of alternative distribution models that we're looking at to solve this problem, so that films like Children of Honey, films like Chameleon Corridors can be seen by large amounts of African audiences. And yeah, so that's definitely something that we're very, very much working out with AFRISOS.
And in a month from now, we're going to be launching the Hadzabe Media Center. And this will be a platform where we get to correct the false narratives of the Hadzabe people that are often seen online. The Hadzabe hunter-gatherer community has become extremely viral online in the last 2 years. There are videos with 350 million views that just show them pretty much eating raw meat and acting all savage, which these are all things that they don't do. They do not eat raw meat, and they do not wear these animal skins and walk around in the bush with these animal skins. They do live in nature. They do live in a very old way of life, still holding on to their old heritage. But when these online viral content is getting viral with these extremely exoticized or exaggerated tropes, it is a vicious cycle. The more content that is seen, the more content creators come and try to create that content, and then more and more money is used into alcohol addiction and so many other negative effects that have happened time and time again to other indigenous communities. So we're really seeing this as a big issue, and we're seeing the Hadzabe Media Center as an innovative solution of trying to tackle this false narratives that are seen online. So that is launching in a month. That AFRISOS is a big partner too, and we're super excited to take on this new direction that maybe can act as a model for many other traditional and indigenous communities all around the world to reclaim their narrative and own the voice.
And part of this launch will be 5 films made by the Hadzabe themselves. So for the first time in known history, they're not the subjects of the influencers and standing in front of the camera. But last November, we've had a workshop with them when they were the ones holding the cameras. They were behind the cameras and deciding what's going to be filmed. And so part of the launch will be 5 films made by the Hadza themselves. So very, very exciting times.
Yeah, so for AFRISOS now, as we spoke, we are in the middle of a film workshop right now. So what's next for AFRISOS, I believe, is getting this film out and make sure the world see these films, and it's gonna be amazing. Like putting like some links later on of this workshop and the films that we created. So that's the next for AFRISOS. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I can't wait to see all of that stuff as it comes out throughout the year. That all sounds really, really exciting. I've got one more question, but before I get to that, is there anything else that you guys wanted to share or emphasize before we wrap up?
I was just thinking with the Hadzabe Media Center, when you've asked what it was, I'm not sure if it came across how big of the project it is that we're working on. So maybe I could add a couple of details to that. So the whole project with the Hadzabe community started with Jigar's contact with the community about 5 years ago. And that's when the filming started of the Children of Honey documentary. Realizing the challenges that the community is facing because of the climate change, because of the changes in the local environment, because a lot of other communities are coming and encroaching on their land. There was quite a strong need of starting to develop an impact approach to the community. And as well as it was already quite clear that they were very keen to not be filmed, but actually be very actively participating in the filming project. And so that's how the Hadzabe Media Center idea came alive, was how can they be very much participating in the filming process. And since 2020, I think since 2022, when the foundations were laid for the center, there's been 3 photography workshops with the Hadzabe community and 2 filmmaking workshops. So now there is around 30 filmmakers and photographers within the Hadzabe community that have been led and mentored to actually start documenting their own stories, as well as upskilled to be part of the crew on the documentary. And through this, now that plugs into what Jigar was saying, that we're challenging these narratives that are spread about the Hadzabe people online, but they are actually empowered and they have the tools in their hands to do it on their own terms. And the Children of Honey Impact campaign spans across multiple layers with the community. So the community essentially in, I would say, very intimate meetings with the community chiefs and the local leaders, we understand what is it that they are facing with challenges. And one of those challenges was that they would really love to use digital media as a way to create memories for themselves because of the oral tradition. And so having access to these cameras and modern technology is really the perfect way for them to create these digital memories, as we call them, the digital artifacts. At the same time, Be Wild and other organizations plug in really, really well into the other pillar of the impact campaign, which is addressing the fact that they are not able to continue living their hunter-gatherer lifestyle because of the climate changes, and there's a lot of the wildlife is disappearing that they would normally hunt. And thirdly, it is the tourism reform. So how do we actually, as from within, together with the community, address this tourism that is now flooding towards them? Also because of the digital media and because of what films were created about them, people have this idea, oh, there's these Stone Age people that I can come and visit, and they're stuck in the past. They still live like savages, which is absolutely not true. And so the community now, thanks to the workshops that we run at the Hadzaba Media Center, have the tools in their hands to actually show who they really are and how they want to be seen and remembered by the world.
Fantastic. That sounds, like an amazing program. So well done to you all. A final question for you, Jigar. If people were to donate money to AFRISOS, what sorts of things would that money go towards?
Thankfully, after having run so many programs, we have now a curriculum that works really, really well for all ranges of African filmmakers, whether it's people who have already got some camera experience or whether it's traditional communities who are using the camera for the first time. We have been able to create this learning model that elevates their voices in an authentic way. However, we don't have enough capacity to run these programs on a continuous basis. It's not just about coming into a community and doing a 10-day workshop and then leaving and then hoping for the best. It's about continuous feedback. It's about continuous co-creation, and it's about really the journey of elevating their voices is a long one, and it's a multifaceted one. So we do want to be doing at least 6 programs with the Hadzabe community every year. We do want to be doing 6 programs for African filmmakers every year, and we're constantly fundraising for actually getting the filmmakers to participate in these workshops because they're all expenses paid. As Frank mentioned, there are so many barriers to an African filmmaker. There's access, there's equipment, there's knowledge, there's so many things. And we've been able to take care of all of those barriers for these filmmakers. It's just about now bringing them to the field and showing up with these mentorship programs. And so if people were to donate to AFRISOS, they would go directly into these mentorship programs in elevating the voices of traditional African communities as well as these African griots. So that they can contribute towards making this world a better place with Africa's rich natural and cultural heritage.
Brilliant. Well, on behalf of all the people who support the Protect the World podcast, we'll be making a donation to AFRISOS very shortly. And I'd encourage everyone listening at home to go and make your own donations as well. As you've heard, they're an amazing organization doing amazing things. A big thank you to everyone who supports the show, and an even bigger thank you to you, Jigar, Simi, Frank, for taking the time to chat with me about all the incredible work that AFRISOS is doing. I came across you guys about a year ago, and I've been following your work very closely ever since, and absolutely loving everything that you put out. And I really enjoyed the conversation today as well. So I look forward to seeing everything that you're going to put out in the future. So yeah, a big thank you to all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That was Jigar, Frank, and Simi from the African School of Storytelling. If you'd like to support the organisation's work, you can donate to them directly by visiting afrisos.ngo. And you can also follow their work on all the usual social media platforms. On behalf of all the amazing people who support this project, I was able to make a donation of a few $100 to AFRISOS. If you'd like to help me give more money to more amazing NGOs in the future, please consider signing up to the Patreon for as little as $5 a month. Over the course of this year, I'm hoping to start collaborating with local filmmakers and photographers on the ground to help tell the stories of the NGOs featured on the Protect the World podcast. So if you've been considering signing up to the Patreon, now would be a great time to jump on board. You'll find the link to join in the show notes. In the show notes, you'll also find further information about a range of topics that we discussed in today's episode. Another huge thank you to everyone who supports this podcast, and to Jigar, Frank, and Simi for taking the time to chat with me about all of their amazing work. I hope you found the team at AFRISOS as inspiring as I did. And I'll see you next month for another episode of Protect the World.